Coming up, the mass extinction fraud. Welcome to Just Facts News, where we bring you thoroughly vetted facts that other newscasts have ignored or distorted. On a recent episode of 60 Minutes, host Scott Pelley reported that the Earth is in the midst of a mass extinction and made claims like this.
A World Wildlife Fund study says that in the past 50 years, the abundance of global wildlife has collapsed 69%.
Here's what 60 Minutes failed to tell you. The World Wildlife Study doesn't actually measure the abundance of wildlife, and scholars in academic journals have criticized the World Wildlife Fund and media outlets for claiming that it does. In fact, a paper in the journal Nature found that the World Wildlife Fund's claims about a massive decline in vertebrate populations is driven by only 3% of populations, and there were no declines across typical populations. Another paper examined the world's largest database of long-term species abundances and found that 85% of them had not changed, while 7% were declining and 8% were growing. Pelley also featured a small group of selected scientists and let them make unchallenged claims like this.
The rate of extinction is extraordinarily high now and getting higher all the time.
We know the rate of extinction is extraordinarily high because of a study of the fossil record by biologist Tony Barnofsky, Ehrlich's Stanford colleague.
The data are rock solid. I don't think you'll find a scientist that will say we're not in an extinction crisis.
Barnofsky's research suggests today's rate of extinction is up to 100 times faster than is typical in the nearly 4 billion year history of life.
Here's more of what CBS News failed to tell you. Barnofsky's research found that the figure of up to 100 times could be as low as 8 times. But more important than that, none of this data is rock solid. As a Cambridge University Press book on biodiversity explains, no one has made a serious attempt to judge the reliability of extinction rates based on fossils because the uncertainties at each stage of the calculation would make the effort worthless. Thus, the book plainly states, probably nobody would be surprised if it were off by a factor of 10 or even 100. Worse still, Barnofsky's research makes a fatal mistake with regard to modern extinction rates. That's because he counts every extinction and possible extinction, even though the vast bulk of them have occurred on islands where populations are small and geographically restricted. Then he compares that to extinctions from the fossil record, which are mainly global in nature. A 2011 paper in the journal Diversity and Distributions pulled back the curtain on this farce by noting that there have been only 9 confirmed extinctions of continental birds and mammals since the year 1500. Likewise, a 2015 paper in the journal Science disclosed that there have been no global extinctions of marine animals for the past 50 years. And what about the claim that no scientist would say we're not in an extinction crisis? A paper in the journal Endangered Species Research by an Australian scientist says that some scientists overstate the risks of species extinctions by using gross and deliberate exaggerations. He also notes that scientists who designate species as endangered are often the recipients of funding as a result of these actions. Thus, the potential for self-serving assessments has long been recognized in the scientific community. Likewise, the scientists who authored the paper in Diversity and Distributions plainly state that their results are at odds with claims of grossly exaggerated extinction rates. More important than the opinions of any scientists are the actual facts of this matter. And these show that extinction predictions have been absurdly exaggerated. For example, in 1977, President Jimmy Carter tasked the EPA and several federal agencies to produce a report on probable changes to the Earth's environment by the year 2000. This turned into a Herculean effort involving hundreds of people and the world's leading environmental organizations. In 1979, they released this report, and it predicted that under current policies and continuing technological progress, at least 500,000 to 600,000 species would become extinct by the year 2000. So how close did this projection come to reality? Per a 2004 report by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, at least 27 species became extinct between 1984 and 2004. The report notes that other extinctions may have occurred, such as 8 species of birds, but more research is needed to be certain. Even if 100 species went extinct in this period, the official government projection overshot the reality by 500,000% in just 20 years. And what was the source of this failed prediction? The report explicitly states, the World Wildlife Fund. Thank you for joining us. Tune in next time for more thoroughly vetted facts that other newscasts ignore or distort.